I think it's time that you and I arranged a heart to heart. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And before Mufasa, there was The Lion King, but sort of Mufasa comes before The Lion King, but then there was like The Lion King that came before The Lion King, and really even there was Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, and Lion King 1.5, which also, anyway, it gets really confusing, but uh this is The Lion King, the the 2019, some sometimes referred to as live action remake, which makes absolutely no sense, but realistic animation remake. I don't know. um Directed by John Favreau, and it's on Disney Plus with audio description. So I wanted to check in on it again before checking out Mufasa, which I skipped in theaters because I didn't want to see it. I didn't think it was going to be an awards contender. So we'll find out on Disney Plus. I don't know. Together, we'll boldly go. Um, so let's talk about what John Favreau did with The Lion King, and is what's good, what's and what's those are the three. Those are the three options. Like, oh, huh, oh, mm. It's like Tim Allen on Home Improvement. Um, it's it's part of Disney's decision to continue to just I don't know, mine all of their content to death until you know I don't know, until they run out. I want to know how deep it goes. Like, I want to go to future me and be like, did you know that they end up making a live action version of the Robin Hood movie, but it's CG animated, so it's still the fox? It's really weird. It's bizarre. Like, I want to know, like, how far does this go? Snow White's not doing that great in theaters, so I don't know that I don't know how much further it goes, but we do have Lilo and Stitch and Moana coming out, that's for sure. Anyway, so we have the tale as old as time. We have Simba, and the birth of Simba and the Great Circle of Life. At least that song was still, somebody still sang the shit out of that song. Like, that's great. We didn't mess up Circle of Life. It still sounds amazing at the beginning of the film. Um, and it doesn't have to be the original recording. I mean, for anybody who's had the opportunity to, I don't know, listen to Jennifer Hudson do Circle of Life, to see Circle of Life on Broadway for the Lion King on Broadway, or to see, to go down to Animal Kingdom and see Festival of the Lion King, you'll know that there are some fucking badass singers out there that can sing the ever loving hell out of Circle of Life. Um, so it's a great song and it's a great experience. And if I could go back in time and slap someone in the face, the song that should have won the Oscar that year was Circle of Life, not Can You Feel the Love Tonight. Sorry, that song has not aged as well as Circle of Life has. So we kickstart it with the big sequence that we all remember. I remember when back in theaters for the animated Lion King, like, that was the trailer, was the first couple minutes of Lion King. Like, you sat and you watched Circle of Life and people were like, oh my God, this is incredible. The rest of the movie's gonna blow my mind. So it is. It's a great segment. And after that, it's the same story with some changes, just some dialogue changes, a couple things to make the film feel a little bit different. The major changes have to do with Scar, uh, and I guess the hyenas a little bit. Nala has more to do. Sarabi has more to do. They certainly, both of those have more dialogue and more things to do. There are scenes that exist in this version that did not exist in the animated cartoon that flesh out those characters a little bit more. And I know we have incels out there that are like, but we didn't need that. They're really poorly defined characters in the first movie, and even if you look at what this is a representation of, which is uh, Hamlet, essentially, uh, the representations of those characters would be, they're much bigger parts in Hamlet than they are in The Lion King. So we just didn't feel like that there needed to be strong female representation in the movie in 1994. But today we're like, well, maybe Nala and Sarabi should actually have something to do. Um, I was kind of disappointed that they didn't bring over anything from Lion King Broadway, like Shadowland would have been great to have in here. They don't take enough of advantage of the stuff they've created for Broadway, which is a recurring problem for Disney. It was true for Beauty and the Beast. There was stuff they wrote new songs instead, and would have been a great chance for them to play something like Home from Beauty and the Beast that has gained a lot of traction and gotten a lot of praise, and really hasn't gone anywhere. Same thing with Aladdin. Some of these shows that have Broadway musical counterparts really would make sense for them to actually acknowledge that. Little Mermaid. I love that when they did Little Mermaid live, even though there's no animated counterpart for Eric's her voice, they still sang it because they had a song for Eric that was written for the Broadway show. And then for the movie, they just wrote a different song. And it's like, a lot of the new stuff isn't memorable and it's not creating anything. Like, while I liked Beyonce's song in this, it's hard to say that that's new, that like that slaps. Like that's the new song that that everybody walked away from this going like, wow, the songs from the original Lion King suck, but that new Beyonce song though, you know. So but would have been great to hear her do something from maybe Lion King Broadway that Nala does. Anyway, casting is a huge thing here. In terms of Lion King, I thought both of the kids were really well cast. Young Simba, young Nala, perfect, excellent. Uh, it's not about mimicking the original. It's about feeling like you inhabit the character, and both of them felt like that they did that. They're actually probably two of the best casting choices in the entire thing, with young Simba, young Nala. The two actors I'm least familiar with the names. Everybody else, just who is like a grab. The more famous you are, it seems like the less appropriate you were for your role. It's very interesting. So, the guy that's doing Rafiki, who I also am not familiar with, he's an excellent Rafiki. They stuck to somebody who sounds like what Rafiki had sounded like prior. He's excellent. I actually really dug Shenzi in this. The role originally played by Whoopi Goldberg. Now, she doesn't sound anything like Whoopi, and she's not approaching it the same way Whoopi approached the role. And they've replaced Cheech Marin and I don't know, one that didn't talk, with Keegan-Michael Key and Eric Andre to round out the three hyenas that we become most familiar with. And while Keegan and Eric Andre were fine, I really liked the actress that played Shenzi, who I'm also not familiar with. I thought she was an excellent casting choice. The other two felt like they were odd choices for comic relief, and they sound too much alike. I honestly forgot Eric Andre was in this, and I assumed that they had done a Key and Peele thing and gotten Jordan Peele to be in here. But no, that's Eric Andre, and I was like, that's a weird choice, because they don't even feel like they're different characters at times between those two. I did like Alfred Woodard is Sarabi. I thought that was a good choice. She meshed really well with James Earl Jones coming back as Mufasa, who does exactly what you would expect, which is why he's the one casting choice that didn't change. They're like, well, there can only ever be one Mufasa. like, um, so of course, James Earl Jones just knocks it out of the park again with his big booming voice, and rest in peace. Um, John Oliver feels like he was born to play Zazu. Singing voice is not amazing, but Zazu doesn't sing that much, and I just can't wait to be king. So it was fine. Uh, I'm working my way up. I'm working my way back to you, babe. Uh, we had, um, I guess, I guess I'll jump to Timon and Pumbaa. So, Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen as Timon and Pumbaa, they're interesting because it's a choice, and they're making choices that are different from the original Lion King. Uh, Seth definitely has a line reading in Hakuna Matata um, that feels like he doesn't know what that line means or how he's supposed to say it in the song. Like, he's obviously not a singer, but he sounds like he would be Pumbaa. So in one respect, he's an excellent casting choice because he feels like a Pumbaa. But at the same time, he's also clearly not a singer. So it becomes really hard for him. I have a feeling they're using a lot of auto tune when it's him and others singing along, because they can hide his voice a little bit. But when he's soloing, it's not strong. Uh, I don't know that I care that much because again, it's Timon and Pumbaa, and their biggest song together is Hakuna Matata. Uh, Timon sings a little bit more because of the I can see what's happening. I haven't got a clue. That part. He also does in this version which is a good gag, the "Be Our Guest" moment, which I did like, which is one of the few things I was like, well, okay, so if you're gonna be self-referential, I guess that's funny. Um, he's fine. He's clearly the thing is, it's one of those things where it's like, just cast Nathan Lane. You know what I'm saying? Like, they wanted a certain type of voice. They wanted Nathan Lane without getting Nathan Lane, so they asked Billy Eichner to do it. And it feels odd. It feels like you have somebody who here is trying to replicate, uh, but it's not just a replication of the performance, it's a replication of a character voice. Like, Nathan Lane has a very specific tone to his voice, and it's very hard to find people who sound like Nathan Lane. So they found Billy Eichner, who was their perception of what was closest to that, to sound like Timon. Uh, Now, you could have gone 100 different ways with Timon and found people who also had interesting voices, but didn't sound like Nathan Lane, but they sounded like they might be a Timon, and gone that direction. I don't know if it would have been better to reinvent the role or to stick with Billy or to just recast or to just bring back Nathan Lane. It feels it's different. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of just picking a new person for the role, which is what they did for a lot of these things, and then that person has to then sort of mirror the expectations of what that role is. And unfortunately, Nathan Lane had a character voice. Now, Seth Rogen has a very specific voice, which is a lot more recognizable instantaneously than Ernie Sabella's voice was for Pumbaa back in the day. So when you hear it, you hear Seth Rogen. Billy Eichner is less familiar, less famous, unless you're just like a massive fan of Billy on the Street. Um, so uh, I don't know, but Nathan Lane has that voice that I think people recognize. Would have been weird to do Nathan Lane and Seth Rogen, and I don't think Nathan Lane would have been comfortable doing that, leaving Ernie Sabella behind. So I think maybe going with somebody who doesn't feel like you were trying to just get, you're trying to replicate the Nathan Lane sound. You know what I'm saying? Which is not the character. It's not necessarily, that was a character voice. If you're trying to recreate a character voice, these people that have these, it's like trying to find somebody to do Iago who sounds like Gilbert Gottfried, or somebody like some of these people have these really specific voices. Now they didn't do that with Scar, so why did they do that with Timon? Chiwetel Ejiofor couldn't sound any more different from Jeremy Irons, and the movie is worse for it. But that's because he has no idea how to sound evil. I don't know. It's a very weird performance. But I think Billy did fine. But I think this is one of those situations where you're trying to cast to an actor instead of just coming up with somebody new and fresh for the role. So, I Beyonce is I actually did not mind Beyonce in this role. They took a role that basically had nothing, and she came in and she reads it a lot like you would expect Nala to read her lines. She just now has more of them. Her song is good. It's not the best song in the show, but I did like it. I mean, it's not going to stand out for me. That's the problem with putting a new song into The Lion King at all, is that it's really hard to stand out, which is why this song is, I can't remember what the name of it is, to be totally honest. It made so little impact on a musical where all of the songs are memorable already. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're dropping a new song into it's like, it's really got to slap. Like, if you're going to put a new song in there, it's almost an impossible task. And Donald Glover, I love that you can trick people into being like, yo, you want to hear that Beyonce featuring Childish Gambino song? Then just play Can You Feel the Love Tonight? But yeah, I mean, he did a lot better than I thought he was going to. I mean, we know him as a rapper, not necessarily as a singer. So I thought he did a good job. And Donald is a thoughtful actor, so he was bringing the right level of emotion. I think there was one time where he read a line and I was like, I don't think you know what that means. I think that's just a line from the movie, and they're making you say it because like we're all expecting it to be there. There are a couple times where that happens and somebody's forced to say a line because it was in the movie, and it doesn't work for them. And a lot of times with famous talent, they're used to being able to rework the line so that it does work for them. So it feels like something that they would say, and change the structure of a sentence a little bit, punching up the dialogue, whatever. But they couldn't do that here because they're repeating dialogue. It would make it really hard for these people to do Shakespeare, because then you have to read. People are expecting you to read Shakespeare as Shakespeare. You don't change it. So I don't know, but overall, I like Donald Glover. Yeah, in the role, I thought he brought his own thing. He wasn't trying to copy Matthew Broderick, but he also didn't feel like he was too far removed from what Simba was supposed to be. The one big thing that I did not like was Chiwetel Ejiofor as Scar. He's so boring. He is the least. I love Chiwetel as an actor. I think he's a great actor. He did make kind of a crappy movie last year with Rob Peace, but he was good at it. He's just not that great of a director for that movie. But he's generally an excellent actor out of the gate every single time. I don't know why he was chosen to be Scar. I don't know what's going on here. They don't even really sing Be Prepared. Be Prepared is a mess now. And I think it's largely because they picked somebody. Now, Jeremy Irons is not a great singer either. He actually blew out his voice while singing Lion King, while singing for the original Lion King movie. So in the track, there's a couple of seconds in the original Be Prepared song where Jim Cummings does part of the song as Jeremy Irons. And people have lived with that for all these years, thinking that that's Jeremy Irons from start to finish. It's actually not. It's actually Jim Cummings, because Jeremy Irons went so hard the first time on that song as a non-singer, you know, uh, to make sure that Scar felt scary, to make sure that Scar felt like a villain. Chiwetel's going for something completely different, which is this sort of like laid back, like, oh, I can't be bothered. Oh, it's terrible that you would find that we Simba, don't do that. Go over there. It it reminds me a lot of Javier Bardem. What I didn't like about Javier Bardem in The Little Mermaid, you know, like that's what it is. And I'd forgotten how much I didn't like his performance because it's been like 6 years since I've seen this. So rewatching again, I was like, God damn. Just like, oh God. Um, yeah, it's my least, I think it might be my least favorite thing he's done as an actor. I'm like, you couldn't find somebody who had, was the direction, it's possible it's Jon Favreau. It's possible that Jon Favreau's direction was don't do too much, you know, but it almost feels like he's doing too little, which is kind of what you get with Javier Bardem in Little Mermaid with his King Triton just coming out of the water and like, oh yeah, I can't even remember. His voice was so weird. Um, yeah, so I'm not a fan of this version of Scar. But you know, you have to make your own choices if you're going to remake these Disney movies. You have to find reasons of doing them differently. And I think they had an excellent opportunity here with how popular the Broadway musical is, of bringing some of those songs along and incorporating them and showing us what that would have looked like with an animated version of it, because those songs don't get to be in movies. So why aren't we bringing along some of the songs written for the Broadway show, you know, which has been running forever? It's obviously popular, been on Broadway for 30 fucking years, you know? Like, um, so I think that's the missed opportunity here. Because with every opportunity that you get to turn a Disney classic into a movie, you have to figure out what it is. Why is it that you're trying to do something with it? And the movies that actually try and make a swing and do something different, those typically are the ones that I remember more. Those typically are the ones that I like more, even if I don't think the movie is genius. As an adaptation, I gravitate towards the ones that feel different from the animated cartoon, not just like a live action adaptation. And I would say that even before Losing My Sight, because some of those I was able to see before, and I just don't feel like that they did enough to separate themselves. They stayed too close to the original. So give me a reason for existing, other than, well, we wanted to make, because the thing about Disney classics is that they're classics and they're supposed to be timeless. When I was growing up, I wasn't looking for a new version of Snow White, Bambi, Pinocchio, Dumbo. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was watching these movies that were far older than me, while also watching the new Disney classics coming out, like Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Lion King. I was still watching all the older Disney classics because those movies were timeless and I wasn't worried about remakes. Um, but for some reason now, we're worried about keeping it fresh, but it's the exact same thing. And I think probably the greatest egregious example of this is the fact that there's a Moana movie coming out already. We've already made a live action Moana. And you know, the only reason we did that is so that Dwayne Johnson could play the same role that he's already playing. So it's like, why are we doing this? What is the real reason? What is the need behind this? So I have a feeling live action Lilo and Stitch is going to be awful. I have a feeling that Moana is going to be awful. And they're going to be awful because they're not really doing anything different. Some of the movies that actually tried to do something different were Alice in Wonderland and Maleficent. They actually tried to do something a little bit. Alice in Wonderland is quirky enough that you can't look at that and say that's exactly the same as a cartoon. Tim Burton really did kind of do something different with that movie. And arguably we did the same thing with Maleficent, which they tried to replicate with Cruella. That's all Cruella is replicating the Maleficent point of view. But Maleficent is different than Sleeping Beauty. It's like, if you're going to do a Sleeping Beauty movie, well, why not do Maleficent instead? So that made sense. A couple of them do make sense, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them are just, feel like cookie cutter carbon copies that are like, well, look how cool it is for us to do it to animate it in this style, or change the story, or they have to update it because parts of it aren't, quite, haven't done the test of time, like the changes that they made for Lady and the Tramp. So, Lion King has some positives and it has some negatives. The audio description track is written well. It's a UK track. I kind of do question the choice of narrator, but the thing about Lion King is that we can question a lot of the voice casting choices. So it's always been this gray area where the argument has always been, well, this does take place in Africa, but in terms of casting, it's always been a diverse cast and not what you would see if you go see this on stage, when you actually have to see what the actors look like, which is always the funny juxtaposition. Is it's like, when Disney can't hide people behind costumes, they cast very specifically for Festival of the Lion King and Lion King Broadway. But when you can put a voice behind it, it becomes totally different. So, yeah, I think the track was written well. It actually has character description that continues on as after a character has been introduced, we continue to learn more about them. The example would be Simba. There's we've already met him, and later on there's a moment where it mentions that Simba does not have a mane like Mufasa. So that's a continuing character description, which is really helpful. Not enough movies do that. Most movies and TV shows just introduce a character and then that's it. That's all you get. The blonde woman, okay, that's all I get to know. Fine, like, they're blonde. Don't know anything about age, size, anything else, but they're blonde. Cool, thanks. So, yeah. It's not one of the worst ones either, though. Like I said, some of this does work and some of it works really well. And those kids are really good. I mean, young Simba, young Nala, I should know your voices and Hollywood should cast you again, but I feel like Hollywood's not casting you again, even though they should cast you again, because you were two of the best casting choices in this movie. So see it for them, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, see it for the people who you don't know. See it for the young Nala, young Simba, Rafiki, Shenzi. Those people are all great. Obviously, Mufasa, James Earl Jones is making a choice to not change it, to say that there can be only one. And some people did a really solid job of living up to what the role was, like Alfred Woodard and Beyonce and some of the others. So um, it's a mixed bag. Jon Favreau did a better job with Jungle Book. So I'm gonna give The Lion King a B. I think it's an imperfect movie, but I don't think it's a bad movie. It benefits a lot from things that came before it because you're still listening to great music and great score and stuff like that. Things that are, but does it need to be here? I don't know. I don't think so. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.